Welcome to the Keon Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Vince McKee. If you would like to be a sponsor of the Keon Sports Podcast, please email me, CoachVin14@yahoo.com. I can promise you'll get a lot of bang for your buck. No doubt about it there. Our story earlier this week with Brock Lesnar and Terry Reynolds is now over 250,000 views worldwide. Now, without any further ado, let's get to our guest, Jon Fitch of the MMA world. You know him from UFC, World Series of Fighting, and now Bellator. It's our honor and our pleasure to bring you Jon Fitch. Let's get him to the phone now. All right, on the hotline with us now, Jon Fitch of the MMA world. You know him from the UFC, World Series of Fighting, and now Bellator. Jon, how are you today? And thank you for coming on the show.
I'm doing really good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, we wanted to ask you to start off here. Coming out of Carroll High, what made you decide to go to Purdue University and become a Boilermaker?
Well, I wanted to wrestle against the best people in the country, and that was, to me, the Big Ten, schools in the Big Ten. So I knew I wanted to go to a Big Ten school. And then, it was twice as expensive to go out of state. So then narrowed choice selection down to two. And I already had friends that were going to Purdue. An ex-teammate was already at Purdue Wrestling. And IU sucks, so I went to Purdue.
No, I mean, hey, I don't know if you realize this, but I'm from Northeast Ohio. So I'm about, no, it's all good. I'm about 2 hours north of Columbus. And, it's pretty rabid out here, with Ohio State. And, we find ourselves, pulling for Big Ten and, the NCAA tournaments and bowl games and stuff. But, besides that, not really. So I wanted to ask you this now, and this is always a favorite question of mine, simply because I know myself, I came from a family of amateur wrestlers, high school and college, on both my mom's and my dad's side of the family. Now, as we all know, there is no such thing as professional wrestling. I mean, there's the stuff you see on TV that's scripted, but there isn't really a professional wrestling you could get into. So for you, coming out of Purdue, you made the choice to go into MMA training, and I'm just curious, what made you decide to start training alongside American Kickboxing Academy?
That was kind of a roundabout way I got out to California because I started talking to a manager called Dwayne Zinkin, who was a All-American wrestler out of Fresno State. And he kind of was recruiting guys out of college because he thought fighters were the next big things in fighting. College wrestlers were. So he had contacted Tom Erickson, who was an assistant coach at Purdue at the time. And, Tom put me in contact with him. So he was working with Crazy Bob, and Crazy Bob was with Frank Shamrock, and Frank was with Javier Mendez at AKA out here. So I came out, around that time to kind of scope things out. I was in grad school as a grad assistant at Purdue at the time. I came out over Thanksgiving break just to see what was going on and see what it was like to actually train like a fighter instead of just making it up like we were. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of just led to me to making my way out to California.
So here's the thing now, and I love Forrest Griffin. He's one of my all-time favorite fighters to cover as a journalist and root for as a fan. However, when I look at the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, and this is me talking completely on the record, and it might get me in trouble, but it's fine. I think you personally, okay, I'm not just saying this because you're on the phone with me. I think you personally, when you look back at everybody's career, were way better than anybody to come out of the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. So when I started doing my research and find out how close you were to being on that show, it makes me kind of scratch my head. What happened?
No, I mean it was the progression of what they've been working for. They've turned it into pro wrestling. They've turned the sport into pro wrestling without predetermined outcomes. The fights are real, but the everything else. There's no real ranking. There's no. Even the title is just a trophy they say they give to the best fighter that night. It's not a world trophy, so a world title. So they've kind of made a mockery of a beautiful sport. I think with them monopolizing things, but I'm hoping that we get more freedom and free agency in the sport to get things back to operating the way it should be.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think competition is the best you could have it. And I mean, you look at you look at situations like how did this guy get a title shot? I remember a few years back, Michael Bisping beat Luke Rockhold. He's the middleweight champion, and then Dan Henderson comes in, and Dan Henderson hadn't won a meaningful fight in years, and all of a sudden he gets a title shot because everybody wanted to see a rematch. Brock, and it's like you get this weird feeling like Brock Lesnar could come out of retirement at any time and get a title match. So I get what you mean. I mean, and I'm telling you right now, as a journalist and as a fan, it is frustrating. There's no legitimacy anymore.
No, and don't get me wrong. Like sometimes you want to see Brock come out and fight somebody in a big fight, but it doesn't have to be, for the title or the freak fights or the circus of things. They can still go on. Like they're still fun, but like you need some kind of merit-based system for rankings and the titles.
No, yeah, I agree. I don't want to get too far off track, but I talked with guys like Ray Maynard this week, Sean Shirk, about health insurance, pension plans, and things of that nature. It really is like they bring you in, they give you 2 comp tickets, they let 2 quartermen come in, and it's just all of it's ridiculous when you break down the amount of money you get paid compared to the amount of money you have to spend on travel, hotel, cornermen, training. It's not what people think it is.
It's one of the big problems is the secrecy around what people are being paid, and not knowing how much the company is making off of you is an even bigger problem. You can't really negotiate what you're getting paid if you have no idea how much money you're making with people.
Yeah, then that is definitely a problem. I agree. So let's talk about you, because we could we could talk about issues with the UFC all day long. Trust me, I know. Now, but for you, man, 3-2-1, not the best way to start an MMA career. However, something clicked, and you went on an amazing run of 16 fight wins in a row. 10 of those coming in the UFC, 16 straight, 10 in the octagon, absolutely unbelievable. What clicked mentally and physically that led you to go on that amazing run?
Well, I started training full time. That was when I had moved out to California. The first fight I fought with American Kickboxing Academy was the first of that 16 fight streak. So going from a hobbyist who hit a heavy bag every once in a while, watch some VHS tapes on how to choke people and punch things, and going from that to being somewhere immersed in martial arts where I was training 3 times a day.
We're going to get to your title fight here in a second, but when before that, you faced Thiago Alves in 2006, and at the time, he was known as one of the hardest hitters in the UFC, a guy who would just come out and take somebody's head off. I believe they call him the Pitbull. So, but you took him out via TKO. Why did you find success that night? And, I have to ask you this on a personal level, years of you being a wrestler as well. I mean, is it always going to be, if a guy's going to come at you and he's going to try to take your head off, you can just ground and pound him if you have to?
I mean, that's the thing is, if you are a one-dimensional fighter and you only have one thing you can do, it becomes easier to deal with you. So if you're just a powerful, striker, all you have is punches and kicks and knees, you become kind of predictable with what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go with the fight. And that's why it's important for fighters in MMA to mix things up and keep the guy guessing on where you're going.
Right, correct. I mean, so, moving on, finally, at 19-2-1, you get your first shot at gold in MMA altogether, your first title fight, and you have to take on the best in the world at, GSP. Why was his style so tough to deal with, and what about him makes him one of the greatest of all time?
Well, I actually did fight. I won a belt in a tournament in Mexico.
Okay, my apology.
No, yeah. Before I got into the UFC, so I am the MMA Mexico welterweight world champ still.
Excellent.
I've never lost any of the belts I've won. But no, with GSP, I had really crappy defense. Like my striking wasn't good, and I didn't have a good game plan going into the fight. He had recently lost to Matt Serra. You know, he got clipped by Matt Serra, and I was still thinking that his chin was suspect, and all I had to do was, you know, hit him a couple good times, and that would have been enough. So I think, you know, not having a defense, a striking defense on the level that needed to be there, on top of a poor game plan.
You know, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm almost positive. I think we were joking around about Brock Lesnar. I actually think he was on the undercard that night against Keith Haring. But, and this is off the top of my head, but, you know, I do remember your fight that night very, very clearly, and it showed me how much heart you had. And I truly mean that, because, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but yeah, like you said, you kind of took a beating. Like, you took a lot of shots. And I kept thinking, like, man, this guy just keeps coming and keeps coming. And, like, not only that, but you looked stronger as that fight went on. So even though you knew in your head, like, I'm probably not going to win this fight on points, how important was it to you to finish?
I mean, he punches powder puff, so it was so bad.
So look,
you fight until you're over it. So I don't know. You only know one speed. You just get after it, and you know, you're in the fight as long as the fight's going on. It's my look.
So this is interesting to me, and this is something, again, I'll never forget it. So after that, you win 5 straight. All right, you rattle off 5 straight wins, and in my opinion, just my opinion, you deserved another shot at GSP. All right, at that point, your record was ridiculous. I want to say it was like 24-2-1 or something, just amazing. So instead, the UFC, instead of giving you the title shot, which I believe you should have got, another rematch, they send you to Australia to fight BJ Penn. 2-part question here. Why do you feel they send you to Australia to fight BJ Penn, number one? And then number 2, do you feel that fight was a draw?
It definitely wasn't a draw. And it was, they had announced before they announced our fight that all main events were going to go 5 rounds from now on.
Yep.
And they announced our fight. They're like, well, not this one. This one will only be 3 still. But no, it was a major stall tactic. They were trying to stall me out. They didn't want me to fight GSP again. They didn't want that fight to happen. It wasn't going to happen. And yeah, I remember back. I had to read through my journals, but like I was, you know, wanting to be released. I think by that time, I was just for the treatment.
I couldn't believe it, you know. And like I said, this was actually right before I got into the business of journalism. Just looking at it as a fan, and I mean, I watched that night too, and I don't even think it was a draw. I feel like you won that fight, quite honestly.
I think they could have stopped it a few times in that last round.
And I mean, that's probably where the 10-8 came.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and you know, it was. You know, they didn't have a commission necessarily set up in Australia yet. So the judges were, you know, not necessarily skilled judges, and I don't know. It's just they definitely were pulling out the stops to try to get me away from another title shot.
So speaking of which, and I think I already got the answer to this one, but after 3 more fights in the UFC, you left for the World Series of Fighting. Why'd you do it?
Well, they let me go.
Well, I mean, you didn't even try for a new contract, or just you ready to go?
No, they just they terminated my promotional agreement after I lost to Damian Maia, and I was a free agent. So Bjorn Rebney wasn't interested in you know, because he was running Bellator at the time, but he didn't know what the hell he was doing. So I signed for major pay decrease, fighting for World Series.
You know, your run in the World Series of Fighting was a good one. You know, going 5-2, capturing, you know, MMA gold for the first time as you won their welterweight championship. How good did it feel? Well, sorry, the second time. I'm wrong there. How good did it feel knowing that you made the right choice at the time? You know, going to World Series of Fighting. Did you feel that way?
I mean, it's what I had to do. It's what I had to do. There wasn't really another place to go at the time. UFC bought everything else up. A lot of the other markets have been kind of choked off. I don't know if I'm wanting to go all the way out to want to see or fight in Russia to do it. So, I think World Series was the best option, and they seemed promising. They look like they're having investors and money, and going to be on TV. So it seemed like a viable place to go. So I decided to fight there. I think they had a few guys worth fighting too at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of them was Jake Shields. One of the bigger wins of your World Series of Fighting stint was against Jake Shields. What did it take to be successful that night over him?
Positioning. You can't let him get a dominant position because he just rides the hell out of it, and he'll use it to slide in, sneak in a submission somewhere. But he's got a great top position. You can't lose the takedowns with him, and you got to be fast.
2 last questions for you here, and thank you again for coming on the show. Much appreciated. What led to choosing Bellator? I mean, coming out of World Series of Fighting, you possibly could have went back to UFC. You could have probably did a lot of different things. But, what's with the Bellator choice? What's the motivation behind that for you?
Scott Coker is a great promoter, and, I had an opportunity to fight for him back when UFC cut me for, not signing the video game stuff. And I should have probably just went and fought for Scott at Strikeforce, but I ended up staying with UFC. But I thought I'd give it a shot, and I hear nothing but good stuff from what Coker's doing. So far so good.
So last question for you. Thank you for joining us again. 2-part question. What fight in your entire career would you like to have again? Like to run it back? And then 2, who have you never fought that's still out there that you want to take on? Like, is there a name that you would love, to get in the cage with?
I think I'd like to have the Damian Maia fight back again because I was kind of sick that day. I probably shouldn't have fought. So I think that would have been a good one to have. What was the other part?
Oh, who haven't you fought yet that you want to?
But I don't know. Any of the top UFC guys right now, the welterweight?
Okay, so I gotta ask you a bonus question now, and I wasn't gonna do this, but why not? Do you ever think, in any world possible, that we could get a super show where you take the champions of UFC against the champions of Bellator in the weight classes? You have one night, a super card, and you split the profits. But I mean, why not? Like, why would that never happen? Because do you feel like there's just too much to lose for the losing promotion?
They're not going to lose the control they have over the titles and the top guys they have in each weight class. But the only way to do that is to have the Ali Act come in, and then you have co-promotion, and it operates the way it's supposed to, and it's like that all the time, where the number 1, number 2 are always going to fight. You're still able to put together fan favorite fights because they're popular and they sell, but you're going to still have, people who are represented by different promotions that will work together. Those promoters will work together like they do with boxing.
Right. That would make the most sense. But honestly, John, I appreciate you taking a few moments today to speak with us. We want to wish you the very best in your career moving forward. And is there any last things you'd like to shout out to the fans? Anything you need to promote? Any sponsors you need to hit up?
No, just check out jonfitch.net and sign up for the newsletter. I send stuff out, and I got a free basic course for kids that I just put out. I'm working on a neck care system that I'm going to put out too. I'll be available if you sign up for the newsletter.
Hey, that's how I got the interview. It worked for me. So, gonna wish you the best, and hopefully we'll talk to you in the future.
Awesome. Cool, man.
And that was the one and only Jon Fitch. So, definitely not shy about quite a few things there. And we'll see what happens next in his career. Interesting take on the developments with the UFC over the years. And like you said, some fan-friendly fights that maybe logically didn't make the most sense, but maybe for the fans they did. Only time will tell as the record books go down, to say the least. So, good time today talking with Jon Fitch. We hope you've had a great week listening to us here with Keon Sports. As we said earlier, go check out all the interviews we've been doing lately. Tito Santana. We had, obviously, Terry Runnels. That interview went viral. Hector Guerrero. Just on and on down the list. Scott Hudson. Sean Shirk earlier today. Now Jon Fitch here. So just one after another. Some big names coming up as well with Nikita Koloff. And on we go. For Keon Sports, I'm Vince McKee. Have a good night.